conference.
Well, who's responsible for releasing the draft report, which has all the indications of being a premature release?
This particular process is the current process of the NIH consensus process in the Office of Medical Applications Research, and based upon this experience, we are in fact discussing, and I have been discussing with the head of that office, with the person responsible for that, as well as Dr. Varmus.
Who's responsible for releasing the draft report?
The process is set up by this Office of Medical Applications Research, and it is the report
of
of
the person there?
Yes, Dr. Harlan is the associate director that oversees this.
And is he responsible for releasing the draft report?
Yes.
And would you identify yourself, please? Step up.
Thank you.
Dr. Harlan, and my time is up, but this is an important point as to why a draft report is released. You are Dr. William R. Harlan, Associate Director for Disease Prevention of the National Institute of Health. And the question is, why release a draft report which causes such concern before it's in its final form?
The draft report was released for public comment and for comment by the scientists who attended the conference. And the panel intended to take that comment and does and will be taking that comment into consideration as it comes to a final report. We have been doing this, as Dr. Klausner mentioned, for about 20 years, and it has always worked reasonably well because we will make changes in it from that draft report. But it has given the public and other people outside of the panel a chance to comment on the report.
Okay, Senator Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must admit to you that I have mixed feelings about this report. On the one hand, it does say to women that you should make your own decisions. You should be empowered to look at your own health background and to make these decisions yourself. I like that. People ought to be empowered to make those decisions. On the other hand, I'm concerned if the report, as this echoes of this report gets out, that somehow insurance companies and other coverers will begin to rescind or deny or cut back on coverage for women who do make that decision, who are in their 40s or maybe even earlier, but because of a family history or their own particular situation, they want to have a mammogram, but the coverage won't be there for them. So I guess if I had a bottom line, as we always say around here, my bottom line is that sort of what I alluded to in my opening statements, that we've got to ensure that women have the power to make these decisions themselves, and the insurance coverage ought to be there for them, regardless at what age they want to have the screening. And so that's sort of how I'm weighing this report. Good on one hand, perhaps bad on the other hand, if it sends the wrong signal out. I guess I would ask you, it was not in any way your intention or at all to send any signal out, or you would deny that there should be anything read into that to insurance companies that they could in any way cut back on coverage for women in their 30s, 20s, I don't care, if they in fact want this screening for themselves.
From my reading of the clear intention of the panel, they did not intend that message at all.
I think that's an important message to send out. Very important.
I think, too, in actually the consensus panel report, it recommended that women who choose to have mammograms during this age period would receive reimbursement for it.
Yeah.
There is also a difference between population screening, addressing all women, and the issues that you raised of women with, for example, a particular family history or a medical condition or particular reason that would lead her to decide that at the age of 30 or 35 it was medically appropriate, specifically not as a population screening, but of her own as an individual test, and that's a very different issue.
I have this question for you, Dr. Klausner. I believe that you agree with us that there has been a bad, erroneous signal sent through the baffling draft report of this advisory committee. But this advisory committee is not your your council. It's not the one that will decide if you're going to issue guidelines or if you're going to issue statements of scientific fact. My question to you is, what are you going to recommend to the panel that will come out of the National Cancer Institute, which is the lead government organization, as a recommendation? Are you going to suggest that we go back to clear guidelines that state what the potential risks might be, or are you going to let this report, with which I think you've said you disagree, continue to muddy the water?
We do not want to muddy the water. I think we're going to work very hard to be as clear as absolutely possible. I have promised the National Cancer Advisory Board that that the whole Institute will work very closely with them in formulating exactly our position, and I feel it would actually be unfair to them to prefigure what I think they should conclude. That's going to be an important process, an important discussion, which we will have openly, and together come to a position as to guidelines or not guidelines, as to information, as to educational products, as to the whole range of things that the NCI needs to do to be very clear about information concerning mammography.
What would be the timetable of the action of the panel so that NCI would have a position, which you don't now have?
Yes.
Which you have, but have changed, and now we're hoping you're going to be a little more clear.
Well, the meeting of the National Cancer Advisory Board is the 25th and 26th of February, and I think it is going to be very much depending upon what is agreed there, what work needs to be done to craft our positions. We will move as quickly as we can, and that's what we promise. A number of organizations are now in the process with new information, with evolving information. I think the American Cancer Society is planning a March meeting to re-examine their guidelines. So this is a time in which, with new information coming out, new analyses, we need to take the time. We need to do it as quickly as possible. But
Dr. Howell, member of the NIH Consensus Development Conference on Breast Cancer Screening for Women. He is chairman of the Department of Biometry and Epidemiology and associate director of the Hollings Cancer Center at the Medical University of South Carolina. Prior to his work at the university, Dr. Howell served in several positions at the National Institute of Environmental Health and Sciences and was a visiting scientist and associate director of the Radiation Effects Research Foundation, Hiroshima, Japan. Welcome, Dr. Howell. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Spector. And I appreciate
your full statement will be made a part of the record, and we'd appreciate it if you could do your oral testimony within the 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fine. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you this morning. In my capacity as a member of the panel on breast cancer screening for women ages 40 to 49, I would like to describe the process by which the panel is assessing available research and deriving its conclusions. Last fall, panel members were invited by the National Institutes of Health's Office of Medical Applications of Research to participate in the Consensus Development Conference, which was held January 21-23 at NIH. The panel was charged with developing consensus statements in response to 5 specific questions which were posed. The questions were as follows. 1, is there a reduction in mortality from breast cancer due to screening women ages 40 to 49 with mammography, with or without physical examinations? How large is the benefit? How does this change with age? 2, what are the risks of screening women ages 40 to 49 associated with mammography and with physical examination? How large are the risks? How do they change with age? 3, what are other benefits? If so, what are they? How do they change with age? 4, what is known about how the benefits and risks of breast cancer screening differ based on known risk factors for breast cancer? 5, what are the directions for future research? The panel was provided with copies of nearly 150 published research papers and reports related to the questions. In addition, the National Library of Medicine provided the panel with copies of over 300 abstracted research papers. Prior to the